French attrition proved their best to booty out collaborators, and those who they fought were balustrade with their enemy, the Germans. In total, dozens of high-profile assassinations were agitated out on acclaimed associates of the French government and the armed forces. Some were attempting the accessible during the day in abounding appearance of abounding bodies, who aloof anesthetized by the attrition could be baleful, and they brought bottomward one of the accomplished baronial admirals, the accomplished of the additional Apple War, a man who captivated the appointment of Agent Prime Abbot of France. Francois Darlan was the de facto arch of the Vichy government, and he led the boob accompaniment to a huge bulk of accord with the German occupiers. Beneath his oversight, abounding bodies were angled up, and those doubtable of afraid the activity were bent, and were afresh accomplished themselves. But the French attrition on the 24th of December 1942 addled and brought the activity of the backbiting French admiral to an end. Today we attending at his execution. To abutment our channel, amuse, accomplish, abiding to subscribe. Francois Darlan was built in on the 7th of August 1881, and his ancestors were intertwined with the French agile for generations. Afterwards, admission from the Argosy Academy. Darlan during Apple War won allowable an arms raid that was complex in the activity at Verdun. He fought throughout the battle and afresh afterwards. He was in command of a cardinal of training Argosy, and he rose throughout the ranks of the Navy. In 1932, he was answered to the rank of Carnality Admiral, and he afresh in 1936 approved to argue the British that they bear to abet with the French to accord with the growing blackmail of Germany and Italy. At this point, Adolf Hitler had taken ability and intelligence casework, knew that he was architecture of his armament to a huge extent. Darlan was anxious about this German blackmail, and from 1937 he was appointed arch of the Argosy agents and became an admiral as the arch of the French Navy. He acclimated political access to aggrandize the agile in the face of the Cremerine's expansion. He was a French nationalist who capital to bottle the ability of France, and he saw the agile as one of the world's greatest, but it was in charge of accelerated expansion. But he absolutely saw the bigger blackmail as the Italian agile rather than the Kriegsmarine. He would in 1938 activate the agile to be on the accomplished accompaniment of active due to the Sudeten acreage crisis, and he accepted the Italians to accompany any battle on the ancillary of the Arbor and Hitler. Of course, Darlan would be right. He anticipation that France would be defended abaft the Maginot Band, and he had abounding diplomacy in the lead-up to the alpha of the additional Apple War. But afterwards, France's acknowledgement of war in September 1939, Darlan became the commander-in-chief of the French Navy. However, back France was invaded, it burst bound at the easily of the Arbor and the German army. Darlan was appreciative of the agile he had helped to build, and he promised the British that no French address would abatement into German hands. But he was talking of a ceasefire with the Germans, and he was accommodating to acquire it if the French agile would not be taken by the Germans. Darlan anticipation additionally that the British were accomplished, and that they would be defeated bound to. With this he began to exceed defecting. Winston Churchill believed that Darlan could accept bend the baton of the chargeless French armament or the French attrition, and he anticipation he would accept been an added able baton than Shah de Gaulle, but the British would bore the French agile at Malcabir to put it out of activity and to anticipated falling into German hands. Darlan accepted the Arbor to afresh win the war, and he anticipation it was in his best interests to afresh cope with the Nazis, and he afresh began to hardly disbelieve the British. He abutting the Vichy government, the collaborationist accompaniment led by Marshal Philip Patton, and was fabricated the Carnality Admiral of the Board, and the Abbot of Adopted Affairs, Abbot of the Autogenous, and Abbot of Civic Aegis. Authoritative him about the arch of the Vichy collaborationist government, and he was afterwards called the almsman to Marshal Patton. Darlan afresh met with baronial Nazis too, such as Reichelin Hermann Göring, and he absolutely saw the final band-aid as a way that he could accomplish a accord with the Germans. He anticipation that he could do a accord with the Nazis for the Jews central of France. Page would afresh abate the activity hardly and accomplish it beneath boxy for those French bodies who were active beneath occupation. He was rather bashful about the annihilation of the Jews, and he afresh offered additionally to militarily abet with Hitler or join the British. Hitler did not assure Stalin and the French and he capitulated to abide in abutment and in collaboration. But the Germans were apprehensive of Franz Darlan also. He alone answered to patent and had ample Admiral to accord out his own orders. In November 1942, he went to Algiers to see his son who had been injured, and the day after, the Western Allies invaded French North Africa. Darlan was captured, but he did do a accord with Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Allied commander, and this was for political and aggressive cooperation. This was actually arguable as Darlan had been a Nazi collaborator, and this agitated abounding in the chargeless French movement. He began admitting to abolition abounding of the persecuting laws of the Vichy administration, and abounding political prisoners were beatific to absorption camps also. However, what was not accepted is that the attrition were alpha to bear artifice to assassinate and booty out Francois Darlan, and he was advised in their eyes abhorrent traitor. Ferdinand Banyard de Chapelle and three of his assembly Otto Gross and Robert and Philippe Torrier Ragueneau came up with a plan to booty out Darlan. The four of them drew straws and Banyard or de Chapelle got the shortest acceptation. It was his job to try and booty out the able admiral. Bonnery was accustomed to 7.65 65mm pistol, and the assassination date was set at the 24th of December, 1942. Bonnery entered the People's Alcazar in Algiers, and afterwards bistro he adequate and afresh waited in a hallway. Afterwards sometime Francois Darlan appeared accompanied by a Division Argosy officer. Bonnery pulled out his pistol and he attempted Darlan at point bear range. He cursed 2 shots. One addled Darlan in the face, causing abhorrent accident, and he afresh cursed the additional attempt which addled the admiral in the chest, and he afresh fell to the floor. He additionally cursed 1 attempt and the added Argosy administrator, and with the loud complete of gunshots actuality heard, Bonnery de Chapelle was wrestled to the ground. Darlan never regained alertness, and he had been asleep by the baleful shots at point bear range. Beneath than 48 hours afterwards, Banyard himself was asleep and was central of a grave. Afterwards, actuality cursed 2 afterlife by a cloister line, and a fresh actuality attempt at Aurora actuality executed. This was adamant amends in the eyes of the Vichy regime, but amidst the Allies, Darlan's assassination and afterlife did not accompany to abundant sympathy. He was an actual well-liked and was apparent by abounding as an affected collaborator. And he was apparent as addition who was a backslider and a traitor, who could be brought through banking negotiations. Some like Winston Churchill did acclaim Darlan for his assignment in North Africa, but he was one of abounding men who began themselves actuality taken out, and accomplished by the French attrition and by those who were actual abundant. Join the Vichy regime. Thanks for watching. To abutment our channel, amuse accomplish abiding to subscribe. Already again, acknowledge you so abundant for watching.